Good Monday morning. Now, I am holding this lengthy URL address in front of you long enough for you to, if you're interested in my astral projection workshop that I created for the Magical Egypt people. Here is the link to all of my Magical Egypt workshops. What I'm going to talk about today concerns astral projection, Egyptian Book of the Dead, things like that. And it also talks about Spinach Quiche. But anyway, I hope you, let's see. There is, maybe I didn't have the whole thing up on the screen there. There it is. https://offers.magicalegyptstore.com/lon/ Astral Projection Workshop. Today is National Quiche Lorraine Day. Now, we're vegetarians, so we don't eat ham, at least not on purpose. We like pigs. But it is National Some Kind of Quiche Day, okay? And I'm sure you've heard me tell you before that Constance is an excellent, creative, innovative cook. And everything she puts her mind to, she does very well. But she really cooks fantastic. And now, what does all of this have to do with out-of-body experiences in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, things like that? Well, I talk about it in that video workshop, and I also talk about it in an entire chapter of low magic. Okay, low magic, it's all in your head. You just have no idea how big your head is. Now, and it's in the chapter called Astral Projection, Traveling in the Spirit Vision, or Real Magicians Eat Quiche. And I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to revisit at least the small portion of that chapter with you today, because who would have thought there would be a National Quiche Day? And as I so often do, I let Providence guide my choice of subjects. That's what I'm going to talk about right now. And it has something to do with Constance's quiche. Now, I know when I'm through here, many of you will write and want her recipe. Okay. She doesn't have a recipe. She does the same things the same way, but she's a creative cook. Okay, and everyone is always a little different. So she doesn't follow a recipe. She doesn't create a recipe. And to even describe it, she said it would take 45 minutes to describe every inch and every nuance of how she flavors all the individual things before combining and all those things. So I'll warn you right now, if you ask for the recipe to this psychedelic magic quiche, you won't get it. But I will try to describe generally what it is afterwards here. And this is well into the thing I talk about the Egyptian Book of the Dead and the importance of memory work and how to keep the consciousness alive and functioning through the death experience and things like that. The core secret of say the Masonic initiations and things like that, vis-a-vis the Egyptian Book of the Dead, how to survive the death experience, achieve the consciousness of the continuity of existence, things like that. But then I turned my attention to quiche. I wish I could say that I'm a skilled astral projector. I'm not. Oh, I get out of my body quite often, and when I'm out, I'm pretty skilled at controlling my movements and circumstances of the vision. But only rarely do I consciously initiate the experience. When I do, it's always at that golden moment at bedtime or nap time, as my thoughts are just beginning to take on visual dream forms. But while I'm still conscious of the fact that I also have a physical body slumbering on a real bed. This moment is characterized by a strange noise that I seem to hear, not with my ears, but in the very center of my brain. And maybe you recognize these symptoms too. Then an intense feeling of an electrical current passing through my entire body. That current is actually the body we might call the astral body. And the fact that I'm feeling it is the signal that my conscious self is about to take residence in it. At that fragile moment of transition, I'm nestled uncomfortably within the general vicinity of my physical body. It is at this moment that I can transfer my consciousness from the I'm in my bed body to I'm in this buzzing electrical body. At this point, I can get up and wander around the house, which always looks just a little bit different than my material house, or take a diving leap into the air and fly straight through the ceiling into a glorious sky. On most occasions, my out-of-body experiences begin without a conscious effort on my part, and I confess I'm really bad at that. I know people and magicians who are good at that. Without any conscious effort on my part, and within the context of a dream in progress. I become conscious within a dream state that I am dreaming and already out. I then become consciously aware of my situation and take control of it from there. I partially achieve this state when I experience magically induced altered states of consciousness, such as when I purposefully induce a trance in order to scry into tarot cards or Enochian magic tablets and squares. And I didn't want to open up the can of worms, but sometimes I use the Enochian tablets and squares to scry into tarot cards. Most of my projections, however, are those in which I find myself accidentally out, wandering only a few yards away from my snoring body. And this is the story of one such adventure. I wish I could tell you there is some kind of great magical lesson to be learned from this tale. Perhaps there is, but mostly I'd like simply to illustrate some of the strange and interesting characteristics of these experiences, and in doing so encourage you to fearlessly start your own program of exploration. Before I begin, however, I need to share a strange and often terrifying occurrence that often accompanies out-of-body experiences and which, I believe, has since time immemorial been the cause of all manner of religiously motivated nonsense concerning demons, devils, ghosts, vampires, and the torments of hell. We might call this phenomenon the terror of the threshold. The dynamics of consciousness that explain this phenomena are, however, anything but terrifying. In fact, I believe that when facts are properly understood, they're very interesting and at times downright funny. A few moments ago, I described the Egyptian concept of the self of the deceased, progressively passing from lower to higher levels of consciousness during the death experience, and how each new level of the mind creates an escape pod for the essential self of the individual. These temporary shuttlecrafts are also bodies formed from progressively finer and more subtle energy material. Yogic literature defines these various bodies as astral body, etheric body, causal body, or mental body, or emotional body. These subtle bodies do not necessarily need to be created and cast off only by a person who is dying. Indeed, our thoughts, desires, and emotions are constantly in the process of creating and discarding them over the course of the agonies and ecstasies of this roller coaster ride we call everyday life. If you have this concept clearly in mind, I now put to you the idea that these discarded bodies live on for a time in the same way a decaying corpse and its hair and fingernails, bacteria, DNA, etc., live on in physical bodies buried in your neighborhood cemetery. The only difference being these astral corpses remain somewhat animated for a period of time, while the remaining energy still residually resident in their shell completely decays. And like discarded shells or husks, these astral zombies are made of the heaviest stratum, the lowest and slowest frequencies of energy. They sink to the very lowest level of the sea of consciousness, the area that is very close to the material plane. This is the borderline between dream and waking consciousness. It is quite literally an astral graveyard. When we're tired and relaxed, we fall asleep and ride an express elevator directly to some pretty high levels of consciousness, those whose environs are revealed in the metaphoric imagery as the dream sky into which we blissfully soar. But if something is burdening our minds and forcing us to slowly drag our sorry astral consciousness kicking and screaming out of our physical body, and step by step up the back stairs of consciousness, then the first place we slog through on our way up is the lowest place in the upland. And that's the graveyard. The dramatic terrors and ordeals that candidates of ancient mystery schools were required to undergo during their initiation ceremonies illustrated this in frightening yet ultimately harmless fact of spiritual life. Because this area is so close to the material plane in the solid coordinates of waking space-time consciousness, the bodies that populate the cemetery of your threshold are literally those that are hanging around your neighborhood. That is why so many of these bad dream experiences seem to include situations dealing with the neighborhood bad people, who, to all dream appearances, are attempting to violate your home or your body or your loved ones. Zombie dreams. In 9 out of 10 of my Terror of the Threshold projections, I find myself trying to chase away neighborhood vandals. Or, get this, and please forgive my politically incorrect subconscious mind, deranged homeless people who are attempting to get into my house. But in the metaphoric reality of this plane of consciousness, that is exactly what they are. Homeless bodies who are no longer animated by a living self, drifting in obedience to the laws of cosmic osmosis toward a realm, my house, that is inhabited by an abundance of living. These astral zombies mean no harm. They mean nothing, because there is no self left to provide them with intent. But boy, they scare the living daylights out of you when you stumble into their world. A moment ago, I mentioned that I'm not very good at consciously entering into an out-of-body experience. I think I should probably rephrase that. I'm not very good at consciously leaving my body unless I first gorged myself to near unconsciousness on my wife's spinach or broccoli quiche. It is with no small measure of embarrassment that I confess that even though I came of mystical age in the psychedelic 60s, and even though I have at one time or another in when I wrote this 62 years, I wrote this over 10 years ago, in my 62 years on this planet, experimented with a cornucopia of mind-altering substances, even though I've labored to control my breathing with pranayama, fasted for days on end, even though I've chanted myself to socially acceptable insanity and engaged in magical rituals that I would never dream of describing to your mother. The strongest and most powerful drug I have ever consciously ingested for the purpose of driving myself out of my physical body is Constance's homemade broccoli or spinach quiche. I must point out that this dish is not necessarily dangerous to anyone possessing a modicum of common sense and self-discipline. It has, however, challenged the resolve of many a strong-willed magician, and unless you've actually inhaled its savory perfume and laid eyes upon its fluffy, buxom filling spilling over the thick, flaky fringe of rich shortbread crust, unless you've actually slipped a warm forkful of its buttery ambrosia into your watering mouth and felt the living soul of cream and butter and eggs and scallions spiked with nutmeg and a dozen other spices and Swiss and Parmesan and cheddar cheese explode inside your head, then, my friend, you have no right whatsoever to ridicule the weakness of others. It is a dish to die for. In fact, on one occasion, a dear friend of ours actually suffered a massive heart attack within a few hours of his feast of Constance's spinach quiche, an event that required immediate triple bypass surgery and months of recuperation. We warned him, and he said, "No, let me eat it." I'm happy to say he recovered completely and had reassured us on numerous occasions that the experience was worth the memory of the quiche. Is it any wonder that a weak-willed and insecure glutton such as myself succumbs to the demons of intemperance whenever I'm confronted with an entire spinach or broccoli quiche during a quiet dinner for two in the privacy of my own home? The particular out-of-body experience I'm about to relate took place 5 years ago, following one such quiet dinner. I must hasten to point out that at that time of my life I had been abusing my body with a litany of bad eating and drinking habits, crimes against wisdom, as Ayurvedic folks would call it. I allowed myself to grow to nearly 300 pounds. This was not good. I'm happy to say I've since lost more than 100 pounds and I'm feeling a lot better than I have in my entire life. At the time, however, my weight made sleeping quite challenging. It was great for lucid dreaming and astral projection because I was often tossing and turning in that twilight world between waking and sleeping. But it was terribly frightening when I realized that many of my colorful nocturnal adventures were kicked off by the suffocating effects of sleep apnea, and that my astral projections could probably be more accurately described as near-death experiences. Still, this season of my life was characterized by a rich assortment of out-of-body experiences and led to my ability to control and direct the circumstances of dreams and projections. I wish I could say that Constance was excited about my astral adventures as I was, but I can't. In fact, they were often rude and terrifying interruptions to her sleep. She usually knows that I'm outside of my body before I do, because I almost always roll over on my back and stick my left arm straight up into the air. I have no idea why I do this, but whenever I do, it wakes her up and she grumbles to herself, "Oh no, he's out of his body again. I wonder when he's going to make that noise." The noise that she dreads is a phenomenon that occurs when my astral body tries to speak, or rather when my physical vocal cords try to vibrate to the speech impulses coming from my astral body. When I open my astral mouth to say something, my physical mouth back in bed makes the most grotesque and hideously frightening noise. Okay, I'm in bed, out of my body, but my out of my body is still near and floating in and out of my regular body. So I'm still treating my astral body as if it was my physical body. And so I may be in a very pleasant astral projection environment, and I want to say something. I want to say, oh, look at that polka dot tree over there. It's just something, just anything. And I try to say it, and I send that impulse to my body to say the words. But because the self that is trying to talk is not the automaton of flesh in the bed, the automaton goes, and and then my astral body goes, that was horrible. Can't you talk? No, come on, say it again. And then I'll go, yeah, even. And I get so frustrated and I just keep trying to do it over and over again. And meanwhile, Constance and the cat are just going crazy on the bed. It's not just a whimper either. I let out a monstrous groan as if I were the most tortured soul in the deepest pit of hell. It's very loud. I can hear myself and often wake up. It's so loud that Constance is sure our next-door neighbors must be terrified by the sound. I feel so embarrassed, and I always think, why can't I speak? Why am I making these horrible noises? But instead of shutting up or trying to wake up, I always just try again, only louder. Okay. That's all I'm going to read of this today, because I just wanted you to get the idea of this is something that is very natural. We all do it. We probably pop in and out of what can be accurately described as astral projection multiple times between the time we fall asleep and wake up. The magical skill comes not in the fact that it's done, because we all do it, but in the fact that we can gain control and focus of it. That we can, same thing with lucid dreaming. As a matter of fact, this is an aspect of lucid dreaming. The lucid dream is just fine, but that's only step one. Step two is taking conscious control and being comfortable on that plane. And for a magician, that's very important, because we can stand up in our bedroom or the living room or in our temple and do banishing and invoking rituals all day long. And we're also doing that on the astral plane. We're also doing that on the magical plane. We're just not aware of it. We're still looking at the walls and the ceiling, and we're still thinking about the smell of the incense and everything like that. On one level, we're on that astral plane, but we're not there. Our center of consciousness is not there. The magic's being done on that plane. And we should get comfortable in operating on that plane. And I believe that's more or less the general theory behind the training program established by both the Egyptians and the Tibetans in the Book of the Dead, in their respective books of the dead. It's a training program as to how to consciously die and retain a certain amount of the momentum of your life experience on this very limited dimension, and attain the consciousness of the continuity of your existence. It's not like, well, I'm either going to heaven or I'm going to hell. Well, you're going to heaven and hell right now, mister. Okay. That's it for today. Let me describe it. Take a normal quiche recipe. Just a normal quiche recipe with the eggs and the cream and the crust and stuff like that. But she makes a shortbread crust, with lots and lots of butter. She doesn't use any sort of vegetable shortening or anything. It's eggs and cream and whole wheat pastry flour for the crust. She has to knead it in like she's making a giant cookie of this, and it's so buttery. And then she sautés sliced scallions in olive oil and butter. And then after she like pre-bakes or the crust, she puts the crust in the oven and bakes it first. Then she pours those buttered sautéed scallions on top the crust. Then she lays thin slabs of sharp cheddar cheese or Swiss cheese, sharp Swiss cheese on top of that. And at various points, she layers cheddar cheese as well. Then as she's making the liquid concoction for the quiche, the cream, the eggs, the Parmesan cheese, she first blends more than you think is humanly possible. She blends, liquefies a bunch of spinach. And she combines that with the liquid cream and eggs and she spices it with nutmeg. And and the baking dish is a very oversized casserole dish kind of thing, only it's round. And she fills it all the way to the top, all the way to the flaky fringe of this with that blended liquid that's blended so much that there's air in it too. And then she takes aluminum foil and makes a skirt around it, because as it bakes, it raises up about 5 inches. Okay. It gets real tall. And she bakes it. Okay. And it is so good that one slice is a main dish. Okay, of any, it's not just a breakfast thing. Okay. And it's so good you can't eat just one. Okay, so even though you're not hungry, it's very filling. Even though you're not hungry anymore, you got to have that second piece. And when there's 2 of you, there's only you've eaten half of it already, each of you getting 2 pieces. And you look at what's left and you can't imagine that it's going to taste any better tomorrow. So you eat that too. And when you're through, you're too full to stay conscious. And you're in too much pain. Your body is so uncomfortably full that you can't go to sleep. And time after time, when that happens, after that quiche, sometimes instead of spinach, it's broccoli, works just as well. It might be the nutmegs that's doing it. I uncontrollably try to take a nap and then just pop out of my body. Now that You're not going to get a National Quiche Day story like that just anywhere. Enjoy. And once again, the whole out-of-body experience workshop, I think it's like $25 or something like that. It's 3 hours or something. And but it's a full-blown presentation done by the Magical Egypt people. And when you go to that web address or that link, you can also see all the other workshops of mine made available, and you order right from there. Okay. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love's the law, love under will. Now go get out of your body.